Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 AgeTech Roundup webinar. And these webinars have become sort of a tradition for us at the German Technologist and the AgeTech Academy. We try to do them at least once a year, and I'm incredibly excited to have you all here with all of us today. Before we begin, I do want to mention that the webinar is being recorded, and we will send the recording afterwards. Hopefully, Zoom cloud recording does not fail us. So this webinar is actually brought to you by the AgeTech Academy. It is similar in nature to the monthly AgeTech briefings that we hold every month for our members. Later in the presentation, we will let you know how you too can become a member and share with you a special surprise that we have in store for you to celebrate the holidays and the new year. The topics that we will cover in this webinar are, first of all, the major events that happened in the AgeTech ecosystem during 2022, then all of the external events and their impact on our ecosystem. So any events not specifically limited to the AgeTech ecosystem, how do they still impact us? Then we will talk about some predictions for 2023. And then right before Q&A, I have a special surprise for you. We will have time for questions in the end, so feel free to either pop them in the Q&A section or writing them in the chat, however is most convenient to you. Actually, the Q&A is probably easier for us, but you do it your way. Are you ready? Let's get started. So let's start with the major events that happened this year. This year has been action-packed. And within the AgeTech ecosystem, I know that there was some concern about funding. And generally speaking, startups, at least in the third quarter of 2022, the third and fourth quarter of 2022, found that fundraising is a little bit more challenging. So what I did is that I summed up the total funding amount for all the startups that are currently on the AgeTech market map. And what I found is that they have raised roughly $500 million this year. And just to compare, this is very similar to the funding amounts that we've seen year over year in this ecosystem. And last year, 2021, has sort of been an outlier because we had huge, massive funding rounds by 2 or 3 companies that sort of skewed the data a little bit. But I'm here to really spread the word that there was funding for AgeTech this year. And it is important to note that some of the funding that was raised this year, we still don't know about, because sometimes companies wait for a few weeks or sometimes even a few months until they do a press release about the funding. So it's possible that funding rounds that are being closed right now will only be announced within a couple of months. So there were 2 big companies that were responsible for a lot of this funding. One is Seracare from the UK, and the other one is Vyar. So Seracare actually raised some of the funding in venture capital and some of it in debt, and Vyar raised the entire thing from venture capital. And they're both unicorns right now. So we do still have new unicorns emerging in this ecosystem despite everything. On top of that, there is a new venture capital fund that was launched this year that focuses on digital transformation of the care economy. So this is a $52 million fund, and we are incredibly excited to see what types of startups they invest in. Also, the Ziegler Linkage Fund announced another fund now targeting minority-owned firms. So traditionally, the Ziegler Linkage Funds have invested in startups that focus on serving the long-term care market. And this fund is no different. So it's exciting that this fund is growing and still raising one fund after another and still continuing to support the ecosystem. Now, there are actually initiatives to support the AgeTech ecosystem from all over the world. What do I mean by that? We actually see more and more governments supporting AgeTech in various ways. So for China, the Chinese government, which has hundreds of millions of people over the age of 65 in its population, they've actually decided that they are going to speed up the application and creation of tech to support older adults. So they are looking for products in like big data, artificial intelligence, assistive devices, rehabilitation, home robots, etc., etc. And of course, China, being the biggest nation on earth, also has the biggest population of older adults. So currently, around 10 to 18% of China's population is over the age of 60, which is, again, hundreds of millions of people. And by 2050, it's expected to be 38% of the population. And if you look even further into the future in population projections for the year 2100, then it's almost 50% of the population that's going to be over the age of 60 in China, which is incredible. So it's definitely important for them to support AgeTech. And I'm sure some of you know that many of the companies in China, even tech companies, are government-owned or partially owned by the government. So it makes total sense for them. If we're looking at the UK, for example, the Longitude Prize on Dementia that was announced this year, and it's still open for applications, by the way, they're going to invest and they're going to provide grants worth millions of pounds to startups that support people with dementia, helping them live independently. So this one is open for applications. You should check it out for sure if your startup has something to do with dementia. From the US, we have the NIH and the NIA, which have traditionally provided grants through their SBIR and STTR channels. And this year, they've had both the Startup Challenge competition, in which companies can receive up to $60,000 in grants. And there is also the A2 Collective, which is also from the NIA. This is a 5-year program that also is able to provide funding for startups, and it's able to provide funding for collaborations, research-based collaborations between academia and startups. There is also a collaboration between the UK and the Canadian government. And so this program there is some funding in it, but it's not huge grants. It's only about $2,000 per company. But it's a really interesting program that allows startups to sort of reach into new markets, into new English-speaking markets, and it involves many, many organizations on both sides of the oceans. So this is also incredibly interesting. Now, when we look at startups, 2022 was definitely the year of high tech and high touch. What do I mean by that? In the past 2 years, we've seen multiple startups enter traditional elder care types of industries, such as home care and senior living, and try to disrupt them with technology. The biggest one is probably Honor. So Honor raised hundreds of millions of dollars. They are not only a unicorn, but they also acquired Home Instead, which is the biggest franchise for home care in the world. They have 1,200 or 1,300 offices worldwide. So what Honor did this year after this acquisition, which happened last year, is they actually launched the Honor Care Experts. So this is a really high-touch service in which you can book a meeting with an elder care professional, specifically a gerontologist or a social worker, and get advice, either for yourself or for your aging loved one. Another company that set out to disrupt the senior living business was Upside Home, and now they're named Upside. So what Upside did this year is they launched Upside Plus. So their basic service is fully managed apartments in luxury buildings with a concierge. So you can basically bring a suitcase and just move in. With Upside Plus, you also get a certified nursing assistant to come help you with your ADLs, and a geriatric care manager, plus meals, free groceries, housekeeping. So it's actually senior living brought to you to the apartment that you choose. And they specifically mention on their website, like the the value prop is senior living without the stigma of senior living. That is the value proposition. And I think this is a really interesting service. And it's incredibly interesting that we see two big players in this ecosystem, in the AgeTech ecosystem, that was set to disrupt traditional industries and are now actually adding more high-touch services. The next thing that is really important to cover today is what big tech is doing in AgeTech. So as some of you may already know, big tech actually shrunk a little bit this year because all of the big companies, especially the major tech companies, their stock and market value took some hits, and they are actually not as big as they used to be, but they're still huge companies, of course, and it's really interesting to see what they're doing. So currently, the two most interesting players that have taken strides in AgeTech this year are Amazon and Google. So what Amazon did following up on the launch of the Alexa Care Hub, they decided that they are going to launch a challenge and a competition for skill building, for aging and engaging. And they gave away prizes to skill developers who created Alexa skills for older adults. And they had hundreds of applicants, and they actually had really, really good winners in this competition. So I highly recommend that you check it out if you have any interest in building Alexa skills. And what Google did is they gave a $10 million grant to the AARP Foundation to provide digital skills training. $10 million, that is huge, and that is incredibly impressive that Google has decided to provide this funding. And it actually means that they recognize the importance of digital literacy for older adults. It's incredibly, incredibly impressive. Now, these companies also have a fair amount of activity in the healthcare space, which, as we all know, has some overlap with AgeTech, especially around Medicare, and especially considering the fact that older adults are huge consumers of healthcare services. So the interesting thing that Google did this year is they've added Medicare and Medicaid info to their search results. So now it's actually easier to navigate government benefits program and to find out which program covers you and which service providers in your area accept the type of insurance that you have. So they've added information about eligibility requirements, enrollment processes, and of course, nearby healthcare providers that accept your insurance. And this is incredibly, incredibly important for anyone who has Medicare or Medicaid, of course. On top of it, Google also recognizes that a huge part of the social determinants of health is health education. And so, first of all, they launched YouTube Health, okay, as a trusted source for health information that is accessible online for free for everyone. And they've also partnered with the Kaiser Family Foundation to provide basically health information to everyone. And they're also basically inviting healthcare organizations who want to create video content and want to educate people and provide trustworthy information about health. They're inviting them to join Google Health and to join this program and to work with Google and with YouTube specifically to basically democratize health information. Now, Amazon is also very, very serious when it comes to healthcare. So what they did this year, first of all, they have acquired One Medical for about $4 billion. So One Medical is a membership-based primary care practice that has around 200 locations and virtual services. They've got over 700,000 members, almost 800,000. And basically, depending on shareholders and regulatory approval, now Amazon will have a live in-person chain of clinics that people can go to. And when I looked at One Medical's website, you can see here that they actually, on the top hand menu, they have sort of this choice page. So if you're under 65, you go a certain place, and if you're over 65, you go another place. So this is actually really interesting that Amazon has chosen to acquire this one. And 1 month after they announced this acquisition, they also announced that they are shutting down their own telehealth service, Amazon Care. So Amazon Care was actually launched as a pilot program to provide telehealth services to Amazon employees. And they've later expanded that to other companies. And I wouldn't necessarily think that this means that Amazon is getting out of telehealth, because if we're considering the acquisition of One Medical, then One Medical already has virtual services. So it could mean that they have realized that creating their own telehealth service wasn't as cost effective as just acquiring an existing telehealth service that also comes with 800,000 existing members. What else did Amazon do in this space? They also announced very recently, that was this month, that they were shutting down third-party Alexa skills with HIPAA requirements. So any healthcare provider that wanted to provide health-related information through Alexa had to be HIPAA compliant. And Alexa was actually the only smart speaker that had this capability, that was HIPAA compliant, and they've decided to shut it down very abruptly, as I've read online. And I'm not entirely sure what was the reason behind this. It could be related to the news that Amazon Alexa was actually not profitable at all. It was actually losing billions of dollars each year. So maybe they figured that remaining compliant was not cost effective. So what are some major events that happened in tech outside of AgeTech or health tech? So first of all, there was a huge decline in the stock market. And so after the euphoria in fundraising and IPOs and huge gains for shareholders that happened in 2021, there came the drops of 2022. And we've seen major tech companies lose market value, and we've seen the price of shares drop significantly. So for Meta, formerly known as Facebook, their price share and their market value dropped so significantly that they are no longer not just one of the big 5 tech companies. They used to be in the big 5 tech companies, but they're no longer in the top 20 most valuable US companies. So they used to be worth around $1 trillion last year. And now Meta is only evaluated at 270 billion. So that is a major, major drop. What happened following all of these drops in market shares and shareholder value is tech layoffs. So hundreds of thousands of people worldwide have lost their jobs in tech or elsewhere, but tech layoffs have been what was on the news most frequently. And you can see all the biggest tech companies, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, all of them have laid people off, some more than others. Some companies have shut down altogether, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that we will even see companies shut down, not just crypto companies, but other types of companies. We might see them shut down in the next few months or within the next year. As a response to this massive wave of tech layoffs, we have actually launched the AgeTech job hunt on the Geron Technologist. So if you are looking for a job, you can head over to the gerontechnologist.com, click on job hunt, and check out all the different companies in this space who are currently hiring. And if your company is hiring, there's also a form here where you can submit open positions at your company. The next interesting thing that happened is that the Matter smart home standard is finally here. So after multiple delays, the Matter smart home standard is a reality. So the Connectivity Standards Alliance has released Matter 1.0, and device makers are already able to sign up and adopt this technology, which aims to eliminate compatibility between all sorts of IoT devices. So all the major tech companies are already backing this standard. So Amazon, Apple, Google, LG, Samsung, Philips, all of them are already backing this standard. So if you're looking to buy a new IoT device, you can look for this Matter logo on your device and know that it is compatible with all of the other devices that have the Matter logo. Why is this important? This is important because up until now, when we wanted to make our homes smart, we needed to be advanced users. We needed to read the fine print and make sure that everything was compatible. Otherwise, it was a nightmare. It was either a nightmare to set up, or we ended up with a bunch of apps on our phone. One app for the light bulb, one app for the thermostat, one app for the light, for the smart ring. So it wasn't a good experience. Now, all people have to do is look for this Matter logo, and this will sort of democratize smart homes, and it will allow more people to get these types of devices and make their homes smarter, safer, more fun to be in, and you don't have to be so tech savvy to use it. And the last and final huge thing that happened in tech this year is generative AI. So you've probably seen people posting images that they have generated using DALL-E or Midjourney, or people post text that was created by ChatGPT. So there are tons of applications that are able to generate anything from code to speech to 3D models, and you can do it fast. You can do it in a decent amount of, in decent quality, relatively cheap, and generate tons of stuff that in the past you needed a qualified professional to create. So I just went to Midjourney when preparing this presentation, and I prompted Midjourney to create an image of an older woman flying spaceship and wearing like steampunk themed clothing. This is pretty amazing. I mean, in the past, I would have had to hire an artist to do this, and it would have taken them a lot of time. It would have cost me a lot of money. And this is really quite remarkable. However, it's not perfect. There is still some creepy stuff, especially when generating images. So this is when I asked Midjourney to create an image of an older woman riding a surfboard or surfing in Hawaii. This is not something that I could have used in anywhere unless I was maybe creating a horror blog or something like that. And there are other applications, of course, for chat. So I looked at GPT, and I recorded a quick screen recording for the purpose of this webinar. And what ChatGPT can do is not just create text, but also provide you with answers, stuff that you would traditionally go to Google to look for. You can now ask ChatGPT for this information. It's not necessarily, sometimes it will get the facts wrong. I mean, it's happened to me in the past that it got the facts wrong and I had to fact check, or when I asked a question about AgeTech and it gave me a direct quote of something that I know is on my website. So you do have to use all of these AI generative tools with caution, and of course, edit and make sure that what you're putting out there is trustworthy and valuable. Anyways, it's a really not just cool thing, but it actually has the potential to revolutionize many industries. And there is at least one incredibly useful use case for AgeTech that I think we would see in the next year. We'll get to that in the predictions phase of this webinar. So what about major events that happened outside of tech? I think the major event of 2022, without a doubt, was Russia invading the Ukraine. So even though most of us were not in that geographical area and were not physically affected immediately by this invasion caused a ripple effect that is impacting the entire world. So it's not just gas prices in Europe. It's the entire global economy that has been impacted by this political event. So according to the OECD, the global economic growth actually stalled in the second quarter of 2022. And there are indicators that for many economies, they will have an extended period of subdued growth. So it's not just that, it's also energy, food prices that have gone up, and the global growth is projected to slow from 3% in 2022 to 2.25% in 2023. So that is obviously below the projections that we've had before the war. And there is a fantastic report. You can definitely check it out if you're interested. And you can see on this chart that for many, many countries, the projections for 2023 are lower than they were, significantly lower than what they were for 2022. Another interesting event that has been on the news this month is Japan's birth rates set to fall below 800,000 this year, which is an all-time low. So Japan is already the nation with the biggest portion of older adults in the population. So about 1 in 3 people in Japan is over the age of 60. And this means that Japan is not just going to need AgeTech more than any other nation on Earth, but they could potentially need more people to help care for their aging population. And it is interesting to see what the Japanese government will decide to do with this incredible demographic trend. And Japan is not unusual when it comes to declining birth rates. Basically, all the developed countries and every country in the world has seen birth rates decline over the past few decades, and it's obviously impacting developed countries the most. Some countries have even fallen below 1 child per woman, which is well below the replacement rate of like 2 children for 2 adults. Now, we have reached the part of the webinar where we discuss the predictions for 2023. So keep in mind that this is the part where I get my crystal ball, and based on all of the major events that happened and the trends that I'm seeing, I'm going to take an educated guess at what I think will happen in the AgeTech ecosystem next year. So first of all, despite the economic climate and despite everything that's happened this year, I still think that we will see more AgeTech startups launch. First of all, because there is still so much opportunity and the market is far from saturated, but also because I believe that the tech layoffs that we've seen this year will breed a new generation of entrepreneurs. And even though it might be harder to fundraise, it is also, first of all, easier to hire talent, possibly with lower salaries than was available for us in 2021. And it is also easier than ever to build and ship products, even as a solopreneur or as a startup with a small team, because we have so many no-code tools available to us, and there are also generative AI tools. Some of them are able to help coders write code, which is incredible. The next projection is that we will see generative AI applications for loneliness and social isolation in older adults. So until very recently, if you wanted to build any product that involved natural language, you had to think in advance about all the different things your users might say and ask and come up with appropriate responses, right? You had to decide in advance whether your robot or smart speaker will have an answer to the question, how old are you? Or do you love me? That is not the case anymore, because with tools like the ones OpenAI is developing, ChatGPT is one of these tools, it is now possible to have a conversation with a machine that is generated on the fly. So you're asking the machine a question and it is generating its response on the fly in a matter of seconds or nanoseconds. And I believe it's only a matter of time until these tools sort of seep into voice assistants, robots, and other conversational products. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Her, in which Joaquin Phoenix plays the guy that falls in love with his voice assistant. It might be a reality sooner than we think. So I think this could be a really interesting solution that will seep into loneliness and social isolation products, and we'll just have to see how this evolves. I also believe that many big tech companies, or more big tech companies, will seek out new revenue streams and woo aging consumers more seriously. So we've seen Amazon's launch of the Alexa Care Hub. We've seen Apple launch fall detection on their Apple Watches and gait assessment on their iOS devices. And it's sometimes easier for big tech companies to acquire an existing solution with existing market share rather than develop something in-house and try to win customers over. So this is actually a great opportunity for AgeTech companies, because it's possible that we will see more AgeTech startups acquired, not just for technology, but possibly for their share of the market and for their existing revenue. I also believe that healthcare will continue to move into the home in an effort to curb healthcare spending. So it is no secret that older adults are consuming healthcare services more than their share of the population. And for the United States, for example, which is the largest economy on earth, it's expected that a health expenditure will be about 20% of the gross domestic product in 2027, which is really a huge number. It's in the trillions of dollars. And I also believe that Matter will democratize smart homes. The Matter smart home protocol will enable more people to get IoT devices into their home and connect everyone, and it won't be such a hassle. And one thing that I'm sort of putting a question mark on is about tech-enabled housing models. So it's possible that we will see them in 2023. It's possible it will be a while longer until we see them, but I believe it's definitely coming in our future. We will definitely see more entrepreneurs in real estate create new models of housing for older adults, possibly with sensors embedded in the walls, possibly with smart assistants and high-speed internet already deployed. We'll see where that goes. I don't know how soon it will happen, but I think it's definitely in our future. And now, before we dive into Q&A, I wanted to share with you what we've been up to at the AgeTech Academy and tell you about a limited time offer that is only valid until the end of this week. So first of all, the AgeTech Academy membership is where we host monthly AgeTech briefings that are similar in nature to this webinar. And we also share resources and opportunities for startups and elder care professionals on a regular basis. So our AgeTech Academy members get access to exclusive content, monthly AgeTech briefings, and Ask Me Anything sessions, and discounted rates on our AgeTech Academy self-paced courses. And we actually have 2 courses on demand that are available right now. So for those of you who want to dive deeper into AgeTech education, there is one course for startup founders, executives, and employees with no background in aging, in which you will learn the foundations of aging and AgeTech, the challenges of aging, and you will get a solid understanding of the business of aging, stakeholders in aging, and of course, you will learn about the trends and opportunities that you should be keeping an eye on as an entrepreneur. And for innovative elder care providers or professionals who want to use AgeTech to serve their clients, we've got a special Intro to AgeTech course in which you will learn the foundations of AgeTech with examples for tech-enabled solutions that are already available in the market today. And most importantly, you will learn how to validate, implement, and source the right solutions for your clients and your organization. And of course, anyone who signs up for a course gets access to our membership as well. And we've actually got a limited time offer for the holidays and for the new year. So anyone who signs up using this code until the end of the week, you will get a 15% discount on all courses and membership. I will, of course, email you this link. You don't have to memorize it or type it anytime soon. So now it is time for Q&A. I'm gonna pause my screen sharing and let's see what we have here. So if any of you have any questions, now is the time to post them either in the chat or in the Q&A.
So first thing first, thank you for putting all together, Karen. It was amazing. And you will see the many compliments, I'm sure, here. And there is one question from Benjamin. And basically he's asking, is there any product to make working in care industry attractive? It's a long question, but I summarize in that way to you.
So do we have a tech solution that will make working in the care industry more appealing?
Yeah.
Wow, Benjamin, this is a great question. I think the first thing that we have to do before going to enjoyable is make working in elder care just less of a work that causes so much burnout, because frontline workers have an incredibly difficult job. It is demanding physically, it is demanding emotionally. And I think the first thing we have to do is reduce burnout. And there are some solutions that sort of help streamline some of the tasks and maybe make the back office work of routine activities less annoying. But I think down the line, I think what will actually make working in elder care more appealing is to bring assistive robots in that will allow the caregivers to do less of the heavy lifting and let the robots handle birds and make it easier for the staff to handle bath time, maybe deliver stuff around the building. So I think assistive robots will go a long way towards sort of alleviating some of the burden that is in the hands of frontline workers. And when it comes to making the environment itself more enjoyable, I think it's more of a design challenge rather than a tech challenge. Thank you for your question, Benjamin.
Thank you for your answer, Kevin. So the next question is about the privacy from Anna. What do you think with the movement from big companies like Google, Position as a trust source of information for health, she says?
So I think that the challenge with finding reliable health information online is that finding any type of reliable information online requires a level of digital literacy and experience with searching information online that not everyone has. And I think that if Google or specifically YouTube partners with health providers that are a trusted resource, I mean, I trust my healthcare provider for health information. When I Google any type of health-related question and I see that the answer is from one of the big healthcare vendors in my country, then I know that this is reliable information. And I don't know how many of you know this, but YouTube is actually the world's second biggest search engine. So many people search for information on YouTube, not just Google. So it makes total sense for Google to partner with healthcare providers and provide trusted information. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Thank you, Anna.
So the next one is about a very general one. What are the potential risk compliance issues with the AgeTech solutions from AJ?
So I think this one is very dependent on the geography that you're operating in. There are different compliance requirements. There are different laws and regulations in different countries. And just like any tech company would need a legal team to help the company sort these things out. And AgeTech is no exception. Everyone needs this type of help.
Yes, indeed. And there are some questions from an anonymous person. Where are the robots being used for the caregiving support, in US or Japan?
So actually both. Japan may be more advanced when it comes to robots actually helping patients with transfers, and in the US I've seen more robots help carry objects and do deliveries around the building. But I think it's definitely coming. We'll definitely see assistive robots in things first, and a few years down the line we could welcome them into our homes and they could be assisting aging in place.
That will be really good. And then the next question, I will jump into Randy's. Is there any new momentum in AgeTech solutions around benefits access for older adults? Are there new platforms that help people to be screened and enroll into healthcare benefits and federal benefits like Medicaid, Medicare, and other federal benefits?
So one of the things that Google launched this year is just that. So they are actually providing information about Medicare and Medicaid eligibility criteria and enrollment process. So Google is the first place I would go to look for this information. I've seen some startups take a shot at tackling this challenge, but my guess would be that currently Google has the most information and the widest set of resources that's available. But I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know.
Okay, then let's go to next. Joseph is asking, how can technology standards organizations help in making it easier to develop tech solutions, for example, Wi-Fi or wireless connectivity? It's quite a general one.
I'm not sure I follow the question. Can you
Yes, of
can you
course.
rephrase that?
Yes. How do you standardize organizations to help making easier to develop tech solutions with the wireless connections? It's quite engineering question, I guess, for us.
I'm not sure I understand the
I
question.
will
Joseph,
skip.
you're welcome to email me and we can discuss this further later.
Yeah. And Nestehan from Spain writing to us, and she's thanking for the webinar, and she also read your book. It's cool.
Thank you.
Her question is, do you personally think the AgeTech is revolving more around the advanced economies? Are there any developments in developing countries?
Yes, both actually. So we obviously see more tech startups in general and more tech companies in general in wealthier countries. However, there are massive tech ecosystems in countries like China and India who are still developing. And some of the startups in this space even operate in multiple countries. So the answer is both, and we'll probably see more and more AgeTech startups in developing countries in the upcoming years. So the next question is from Pilan from Spain. Oh, that one we already answered.
Yes, and
Okay.
from Anna about the longevity, and she is asking, are we going to see the AgeTech in the neighborhoods like AgeTech smart cities? I guess she is asking on that part.
So I definitely believe AgeTech has a role to play in smart cities, especially since we often see that smart cities technologies don't necessarily take into account the needs and wants of the aging population. And so I believe that we will definitely see AgeTech solutions enter that market, and there is definitely place for those.
And from Jacob, he's asking if you are aware of any working solutions to make cyberspace safer for older people.
This is a great question, Jacob. So most of the solutions that focus on digital literacy training for older adults actually have classes or courses in online safety. So that is definitely a part of their curriculum. And when we look at like fraud and scams, a lot of them actually target phones. So we have startups that protect phones from scams. We have startups that scan bank accounts for fraud and scams. But when it comes to making cybersecurity safe, cyberspace is not safe for anyone, honestly. And we can all fall victim to online scams and fraud. And the only thing that I believe startups can do and society can do is provide education and awareness on these issues, and like basically teach people when not to respond to an email and when not to click a link, and certainly that you're not supposed to wire money to a stranger just because they emailed you.
Yes, indeed, it's very vital. So one more anonymous question. How do you see the future of aging products when it comes to engaging with senior living with dementia?
So first of all, I have a soft spot for social robots. So I really I love the Paro social robot for people with dementia. There has been tons of research on that particular robot and how it has a positive impact on people with dementia because it sort of soothes them, like the just petting this robot seal and having it respond, the tactile response and the sound that it makes, we're actually able to soothe people with dementia, and by extension also create a calmer atmosphere in the entire memory care building or community. So there are these social robots, and there are also products that sort of help people with dementia to stay independent for as long as possible. So there's the Map Habit product, which is sort of uses reinforcement learning and helps people do their daily routine as independently as possible. So I definitely see that there is a future, and there is also a lot of room for innovation specifically in the dementia space.
That's really good. Since we are already talking about social robots, I will just put Ian's questions. Any thoughts on advancement with social robots?
So I think what we'll see in social robots, we'll see the utilization of generative AI with social robots pretty soon, I believe, possibly within the next year or two. And that will basically make social robots better companions potentially, and more easily, it will be easier to interact with them. They will be able to have more natural conversations. And I believe that will be sort of the next phase in the evolution of social robots.
Yes, and for developing those, we need research, and Susan is asking about it. What are the best ways to work with senior living communities or individuals aging at home to conduct evidence-based research on the efficiency, improved outcomes of new startup products or service?
So the best way would be to start with senior living communities who have innovation departments. So they would tend to be more open to these types of collaborations. And also there are some grant programs that provide grants for these types of research. And then you can potentially partner with an academic institute that has access to either senior living communities that they work with or to people who are aging in place. So those would be the first two things that I would look into.
Yes, indeed. And Alejandro is asking about the Matter standard. Is that working to link data into electronic health records? He is asking.
I don't believe that this standard is used for that purpose. I believe it's mostly an IoT smart devices type of standard and communications protocol. I don't believe there is any health records component to that.
Okay, then I will move to Dick's question. In Europe, he sees a lot of movements in other domains of AgeTech, mostly like matching between homes and generations for housing. So financial well-being and etc. Is this trend is also going on with the other part of the world?
I want to reread this to make sure that I understand.
Pretty long, sorry.
So there is a movement in Europe, in other domains of AgeTech. Is this trend in other parts of the world? So generally speaking, the way I see the challenges of AgeTech being met around the world, I see that it is, roughly speaking, the challenges of aging are pretty universal. So we tend to see startups tackling them in all of the different geographies. For example, the challenge of providing home care to everyone who wants to age in place, that exists in most countries. So we see tech-enabled home care startups in many, many countries. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, then James Brown is asking about your market map. Indeed, he is in UK. He has a startup, I assume, from his comments, and he is asking how to take a place in your market map.
So this is a great question. The eligibility criteria for being included in the AgeTech market map is to have a company that is either backed by venture capital or has a product that is commercially available. which means that anyone can go on your website and buy this product or call you up and buy it. And to have a product that is focused on tackling one of the challenges of aging and serving older adults or family caregivers or elder care providers. And of course, to have a tech-enabled product or service. There is a form on the website for submitting your startup, James. So please go ahead, submit it. We'll be happy to review it. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have lots of them. It's so difficult to choose some of them in the last minute, but I will ask the most typed question. Are you going to share this recording, Karen?
Yes, we do intend to share the recording after this. Hopefully, Zoom Cloud recording will work and we'll share it with you by the end of the week, probably.
Okay, would you like to have one more question?
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes. Let's take as many as we can.
Okay, this one is from Elizabeth. Where do you see more growth in the next year in the retirement communities or ways for people to stay in their homes as they age?
So this is a great question. What we've seen happen during COVID is that senior living communities took a hit and their occupancy rates went down, but they did recover post-COVID. So generally speaking, most people prefer to age in place. So if we're looking at the numbers, it's always going to be more people. The aging in place is always going to grow more in terms of like just the numbers. Percentage-wise, I think it's mostly steady. So most people prefer to age in place, but there is like a small percentage of people who prefer to go to senior living. And I think there's definitely room for innovation in creating new housing models for older adults. So people will have more options to choose from.
It's beautiful. Bring more likes. And Joseph is asking, is there a new upcoming design standards for the AgeTech products? Because he see that the designs are lacking the efficiency when building the products.
So what I see is that I see designers who have sort of with time have created an expertise in designing products for the older population. And personally know 2 experts who are experts in designing digital interfaces for older adults. And there are even guides online that you can follow on how to do this. So this is a work in progress, and I hope we will see more people and more professionals in this space in the years to come.
Okay. And Randy is asking a question about the content. Where do you get the content for your academy? Do you work with like AARP for expertise on aging issues?
And this is a great question. Where do I get my content? So what I have been doing for the past few years is that I have been following all of the major organizations in this space and all of the major media outlets in this space. And I have been creating content also by myself. So basically, we, the team at the General Technologist and the team, the AgeTech Academy, we follow hundreds of resources and we curate the most important and the most accurate need to know right now content for our members. So a lot of it is like grants and funding opportunities. A lot of it is events that people can go to network and to showcase their products. We also try to get discounts on some of these events for our members. Most of the times we do succeed in getting discounts. So there are a lot of resources. I hope that answers your question. Will I be at CES? Unfortunately, I won't be at CES this year. I feel like we're not completely out of the woods COVID-wise. So I'd rather not risk it, but maybe next year.
And the next one is from David. What are the AgeTech solutions that you see that supports the financial wellness for elders?
Brilliant question, David. So there are various solutions for financial wellness. There are solutions for retirement and retirement planning. That's one aspect of it. There are solutions for defense against fraud. So there are startups that are actually able to connect to your older loved one's bank account and scan it for any unusual movements that could be someone trying to steal their money, basically. And there are startups who provide debit cards for older adults who might have dementia. So they will still be able to use their money, but they will be, they're spending, the places where they can spend the money and the amount that they can get out of the ATM is sort of predetermined by their caregiver. So there are really tons of resources. I recommend, David, to head over to thegerontechnologies.com and check out on the market map, there is a finance category. So all the startups that are currently there will be under that category.
Awesome. We are on time, Karen, but I can ask one more question if you would like to.
One more question, and then we will wrap this up.
Okay, it's very quick one. Sherry is asking where she can get informed with the funding opportunities for product development.
Brilliant question, Sherry. So first of all, we learn on these new resources for funding and grant opportunities. We share them with our members at the AgeTech Academy. And we also aggregate the major ones for our monthly newsletter, which comes out once a month. So either of these resources are the right way to go. So
Okay, thank you.
we are at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So thank you, everyone who joined us live today. It was an absolute pleasure to see familiar names, although we can't see your faces. And we will have the recording sent afterwards, as well as the discount codes for the Academy courses and memberships. And if you have any questions regarding those, feel free to shoot me a response email. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.